what I'm going to be showing you today is a concept shoot I wanted to do just kind of a dreamy photo and experiment with using fireflies and lanterns and things like that. So my first round of editing these photos is a little different than the most recent edit I've done. Before I tried to use kind of some fake flame candles in the lantern, and it just didn't quite turn out the way I wanted it to. So I actually learned a few different ways to make lantern light. So it looks a lot more realistic. So I'll be showing you that, and just kind of secrets like how to make it look like the wind is blowing. If I had had more time, I was kind of having to hurry with this model. I would have actually had someone pull her dress up as if the wind was blowing it, but I really like doing photos that look like they're windswept and magical and things like that. So I'll just be talking to you about how I did this photo and walking you through the steps. And hopefully it's maybe things you can use on photos um, later on. It's things, basic tools that you can utilize in many different portraits and things like that. So, and in maybe just making regular portraits more creative. So I'm going to start with these candles because they were just terrible. I'm going to use my clone tool. I'm going to duplicate this layer so that if it does turn out bad or I mess it up, I can actually just erase and start over. So you always want to duplicate the layer so that you can keep the original raw. So I'm going to start. I'm going to option to choose what I want to clone, and then cover those up and clone them. So I'm going to choose option, choose that, and then clone. And you can do this to hide anything. I use it to hide bra straps. I use it, if I need somebody to help me in the photo, but I don't want them to show up later, I just say, I clone you out. So I just make sure I have enough scenery around to take from, or you're going to have a hard time cloning. That's good enough. That'll work for our light. And eventually I'm going to clone her out. She was flipping the hair for me. This was at a shootout with multiple photographers, and so she was helping by flipping her hair to make it look like it's flying in the wind. So I think what I'm going to start with is my light. So I'm going to go up here, and sometimes it'll have this. What you want to do is get the elliptical marquee tool, and you want to come down here to your lantern and just make a little circle. And you want your feathering. Let's try putting on 35. We're still going to go in here, right click your elliptical tool or your elliptical tool you made, go to refine edge, and you're going to go to feather. What you want to do is just make it where that light will just kind of softly glow. You don't want it to be super fake and harsh looking. So we're going to do 25. Then we're going to go over here, and this little black and white circle has all of our options over here. And what we're going to go to is we're going to go to curves. We're going to go down here, and we're just going to brighten up the light. So you're creating your light over here in your lantern. So we're going to brighten that up about right there. Close. Now I'm going to duplicate that layer so that it will make the light even brighter, but you don't want to go too fakely bright. If my lantern was black, it would have worked a lot better, but okay, so we're going to keep on, the lantern is going to cast the light out and out. So we are going to create another elliptical tool. We're going to refine the edge and feather. Want it to be a soft light. Okay. Go to curves. And Perfect. Let's create another. And you're just bringing that light out and out. Another way to do this is to use your gradient tool, but sometimes when you do it more slowly like this, it's just a little more realistic. Okay, we're going to change the light a little bit because we want it to be a little more yellow, like a lantern glow. So let's go. We're just kind of moving the curves layers around. So you can go to blue, and if you move it down like this, you'll see it changes color. So just barely yellow. I like my light to have a little more whitish yellow to it. Okay. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these layers for now because I know that's exactly where I want them. So you can also do layer and merge layers, but on a Mac you can do Shift Command E, and once you get working really fast, you just kind of want to speed it up, but otherwise you can go to merge layers. So next we're going to go to, if you wanted to add fireflies to this, I'm going to show you how to make fireflies, but I'm also going to show you how to just use an overlay. You can create your own firefly overlay. So if you want to use white, maybe let's go in here and let's get a little more yellow for our fireflies. Okay, so we're going to make a round, oh, bad, I did not make a duplicate layer. There we go. So we're going to make a little firefly. Now, what you can also do to make it even better is do File, New Layer, 10 by 10. I mean, you can do any size, really. It doesn't matter because you're going to resize it anyways. That's just what mine was set on already. So I'm going to paint this background black. Then I'm going to go back to my gradient tool, and I'm just going to do one firefly. Oh. Okay. Okay, so there's our one firefly. And you can drag it onto your layer. Now to resize it, you're going to hit Command T. Now I'm doing this on a Mac, so I'm not quite sure what Windows will do. Now to make sure it stays, it doesn't do this where you go wide, short, fat. You can hold Shift and it will hold its perfect size no matter what you do. Otherwise you just kind of can move it wherever you want. But let's make it smaller and enter, or it won't move. And then you're going to go up here and change to screen, so it will show just your firefly. And you can Command T, it's transform. I'm not quite sure where that is anymore because I always do Command T instead of transform, free transform. So just Command T, and that allows you to resize. Okay, so we're going to duplicate that layer. We're just going to move fireflies around. Now you can create them this way and then resize them. Or what I did before I knew how to do that is I went to Google Images and looked up firefly overlays, and people had already made firefly overlays. So I would take that and pull it onto my screen, and you want to do Command T so you can resize it because obviously it's too small. Pull it all the way out and then hit Enter. Now you're going to go up here and click Screen. Boom, fireflies. I do like sometimes when they are, like, I change the color depending on the photo. So with this photo, I would probably want them to be a little less red and a little more yellow. So I'm going to selective color, and I'm going to go to my reds since they were red, and that way I can kind of, you can change kind of what color they are. But I'm going to go with a light yellow like the others. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag it over. If you don't merge the layers, it'll just do that top layer. So once you've done this, you need to always merge your layers, or you're just going to drag a piece of it. So merge your layers, then drag it across. Okay, then you're going to widen it, Command D, transform, and pull it out, and then screen. And there you have your fireflies. You're going to go down here. Oh, I'm actually going to, one thing you don't want is too many fireflies. It can be a little distracting. So you're going to do a layer mask. Now the way that you do that is basically the way layers work is it's paper on top of paper. So think if you have a blue piece of paper and then a green piece of paper on top. Well, if you want on certain pieces of that paper for the paper underneath to show through, you're going to need to cut holes. So you'll have the green paper on top, but you can see some blue spots through it. Basically what we're doing with the layers. So down here, just picture cutting a hole in the paper so you can see through. And here is your mask. So the way to erase certain pieces without messing up your picture is to do mask. So you always have to paint with the opposite color. So we're going to use black instead of white, since this is white. And we're just going to erase some of these fireflies that are kind of in more, I guess, places that would be distracting from your photo. And you can lighten some of the fireflies. That should be good, I think. You just don't want it to be too much. This is kind of going to be a dark photo, so you don't want it being overrun by little twinkly lights. You want it to be magical, but I also want it to be dark. Okay, so I like what I'm seeing, so you can do image or layer merge visible, and that will merge all your layers because I know I'm not going to change anything else. And then you can create that firefly if you ever want and do different colors and different sizes. Next, we're going to make it a nighttime photo. So we're going to go down here to curves, and we're going to lighten right here. And then we're just going to go up a little bit. Curves is tricky. You kind of have to play around with curves for a little while before it becomes something, you just have to get used to it. It can be tricky. So we're going to grab right here, and we're going to pull down. And all of a sudden, we've got this great nighttime photo. Now, because I have a lot of black in this photo, if I pull the shadows up too much, it gets this strange look about it. So I'm going to pull them up a little bit, but not too high. Then I'm also going to grab up here and kind of see what I've got, because sometimes you can pull that up. It'll brighten her face, but then you can pull that nighttime look. There we go. You just kind of play around with those curves. Okay, so we got the nighttime look. Now that this is camouflaged enough and pretty dark, I can clone her out of the photo. So I'm going to merge those layers, and I'm going to duplicate so that I can delete if I need to. And I'm just going to choose my clone tool. I always keep the hardness. You can raise it a little bit. That should be big enough that I can go in through here. And 100% clone tool. You're going to option. I'm just going to grab that ground and place it. Now I'm kind of doing a rough cloning, so don't judge my overuse of patterns. Normally I would take a little more time choosing different patterns so that they don't match up too much, because if it matches up too much it starts to look strange and you can tell it was badly cloned. So kind of want to mix up your pattern so it looks rough like the ground was. Let's make this rock a little bit bigger. And like I said, if I had a little more time, I would probably take a little more time on my cloning. But that's good. That's going to be plenty hidden. Up here, you don't want sunlight shining through. You want this to stay a dark photo. So, It's looking really good so far. One thing I noticed that bothers me that I noticed about this dress is her hip. Where her hip is sticking out. So I'm actually going to clone again and try to pull her hip in. And it's not so much, there's nothing wrong with having a little curve. It's more like it can be a small distraction. Something that's not, when you look at the photos, you think, oh, that's too tight right there. It's just something you notice. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. I just don't want it sticking out. And it's not the best clone job, but there. And that just bothered me a little bit. It's not a big deal. You can also go to Liquify. I'm going to turn Liquify on to 300, and I'm just going to pull. And I can also kind of make the dress look like it's blowing in the wind just a tiny bit. With the Liquify tool, you can just kind of pull it out there, since I didn't actually make it fly. And then when you go back in, you're going to want to fix the ground. So let's clone that ground back around so it looks normal. Not great, but normally I would have made her dress fly, and that's going to drive me crazy, so I will leave it like that. Okay, so next what we're going to do is I'm going to give the lantern a little more light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the elliptical tool, and I'm just going to barely just kind of highlight some areas where I feel like that would be glowing. We're going to go to Refine Edge, and this is just something I still am experimenting with. I haven't really got this 100% down, but I do like it to look like it's glowing kind of around her. So I'm still working on that. I learned these on tutorials also. So the person I followed was doing a speed edit, so you kind of have to catch it on the run and guesstimate what they're doing, which can be interesting, but it's a good way to learn. The more you get used to the tools, the more you're able to kind of see things that they might be doing in their photos. So most of the stuff I learned off of tutorials, so you can go find photographers you really like and kind of most of them will have, well, not most of them, but a lot of them will have tutorials that you can follow, and that's basically how I expand my work. Sometimes they'll offer them for free, which is amazing. I did pay for one class, and it was totally worth it, from Aaron Nace. So another thing is, if you're wanting to learn, Aaron Nace is great for kind of more special effects type thing. But it was cool to be able to add that to stuff I already like to do. So what I'm going to do is now that I've done the curves, I'm going to group those together so that I can control them both at the same time. Otherwise, I would be controlling them separately, and I want to control them as a whole. So let's bring that down just a tad. I don't want it to be too much, but it is going to glow a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of white light in here because you do want it to be brighter right in the middle of your lantern. So let's refine the edge a little bit more. This gets to be a little bit of a long process after a while. So let's see. Let's go to curves, and we're just going to raise it a little bit. We're going to leave it white. We're not going to turn it yellow. See, it gives it that nice glow out of the center. And then, because the light, the light in a light bulb is generally, it'll be white, and then it'll get more yellow as it goes out. I'm going to add one more layer of light. And let's feather this really good. Alright, so I'm going to go, I feathered it, I'm going to go back to curves. I just want that light to look realistic, so we want it to have a nice glow. There we go, that's much better. And now it looks like it would glow over the whole photo. So I'm going to merge these. Next I'm going to go down to, see, you can kind of play with these. You can do photo filter, and then you can go to color, and you can choose, you know, what color you want to filter your photos. So you can go to the blues and really get in there and get some blues, and that's really nice, especially in contrast with the yellow from the fireflies. You can also get down here to the warm colors, which can be really pretty too. I really like these gray tones that I just did. That's really nice in these photos because I like it to be a little desaturated. And then you can go in and you've got your mask. It's this right here. And what I'm going to do is where I desaturated with that gray photo filter, I'm going to go in and kind of resaturate all the fireflies. Keep them that warm tone. And I'm going to keep the light. It just gives it a good contrast. If the whole photo is warm, your lantern doesn't stand out anymore. So it's really nice to get that contrasting warmth. And maybe warm up her face just a little bit. And it's barely a change, but it's a nice little change. Okay, so now we're going to go down here to exposure. And her nightgown, it can get a little overexposed. So you could drag it down some. It doesn't need much, but once you've pulled it down, the dress was just a little bright for it to be nighttime. So I'm going to undo all of that, mask the whole photo. See, I've painted this whole square white, meaning I've undone all that. Now, I'm just going to paint the dress so that the exposure, it won't be as bright on the dress. You have to choose it. So I'm going to bring that dress down a tad. It's nighttime. It's not going to be glowing. Make sure her face is still bright. I'm going to add one more, I'm going to add a little bit more contrast, I guess, in her face. I'm going to pull it up just a tiny bit, just a tad. Zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing here. Don't want too much. You don't want too much. Okay. Let's see how that looks. Just a little more brightness in her face, and it adds a little more contrast to the photos. So we just played with those curves a little bit more. And you're literally, like, the best way to learn is just play. Play with curves, play with these tools, because then you can use them on everything. It's wonderful. I just merged the layers again. I just took the shortcut and go to layer, merge, visible. And now I'm going to go to exposure, and I'm going to go to offset. I really like the hazes, so you can kind of play around in here and add some hazes. So sometimes I can pull that gamma correction up just a tiny bit and then pull this haze. And it just looks really nice on the photo. It just gives it another level from just a contrasty photo to having some character. So you've added that haze. It looks beautiful. Next, you can go in and go to your selective color. This is fun to play with. Okay, so there are a lot of blacks in this photo, so we're going to mess around with the blacks. You can give it you can leave it this kind of dark, moody, or you can go. You can pull it really dark. You can get really fun with that. But what you can do is kind of pull these colors around. and get some really magical tones going on. I really love blues and purples in dark photos, but some people like adding reds, things like that. So you can just get really creative. You can get in your neutrals. This has a lot of neutrals in it, so you can kind of play with those a little bit and see what you come up with. I like to keep a level of realism, so I like for her skin to stay really realistic. See, she'd be a little too purple. So what you have here is this is the original, and it's got a lot of yellows and grays, and it's really pretty, but I like to add that kind of level of whimsy. And then go back down here, and maybe let's play with exposure one more time. Let's give it a little bit more of the haze that I like. I really like hazes. There's a certain level because you don't want it to get too bright. Maybe go in between. What you can do is you can keep those hazes but go underneath and add a little brightness. In contrast, you can pull the brightness down and then close, and then go in here and do your brightness. And you don't want to lose all that light on her face. That's some of the drama. So you want to, and keep the light. You want that light to be bright. And you want to keep your fireflies glowing. So go in here, and you turned all the brightness down in the photo, but you can pull it back in certain places so you get that good contrast. And you want to keep it in her face, because you want to keep it a nighttime photo. You add too much haze and it gets too bright. And awesome. If you want to get to having even more fun, I really like where it's at. I would probably leave it alone, but you can get in here and start playing with your gradient tools, and just messing with those and seeing what you can do. I don't like messing with those too much because I haven't quite mastered them. Another thing you can do is, it's got a lot of color in this photo. You might want to desaturate it just a tiny bit. Sometimes if you do too much color, it's a little cartoony. So what you can do is desaturate her so she looks more realistic, and then go in and again, you're masking. You're bringing back the color through the layer you just made. And you may add the color back in the sides and the photos, but maybe keep her a little desaturated, and it just keeps that level of realism with all the magic that you've kind of added. So, but you can leave it in her skin. It's a preference thing. I kind of like doing it both ways. Another thing I like to add is fog. I just grabbed this screen grab off of Google. So you can go to Google Images, grab some fog. Obviously it's going to be too small. Command T so that you can resize it. You're going to want to hold down Shift while you resize this so that it will stay the same size. And then position it where you want it. Go up here, Screen, and then see how you've got those hard lines. You really don't want those hard lines. So you're going to go down here. Remember, this is the mask tool. So now you have a mask. And go in with your black. Now I don't want this to be, we don't want it to be crazy. And what you can do is also, it looks kind of weird if it's only at the top. So if you take that layer and duplicate it, now you got 2 layers of fog. I like to sometimes flip it just to kind of play and see if I like it. And you can have it coming in from other angles of the photo, because I mean, usually if there's fog, there's a little bit of it. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And let's tilt it a little bit more. And you could just have a little bit of fog. Sometimes I like to add that to photos, and it just gives it a cool look. Love it. Also, another way you can vignette the outside, you can get it a little bit darker in the corners if you want. Select the inverse. You're going to select the inverse. That's going to select everything outside. And let's feather this a tad. We don't want it to be crazy lines here. Let's duplicate the layer. And I'm going to go to brightness and contrast and bring it down. You don't want to go too much because then it just looks totally fake. But you can just add a little bit of darkness in those corners again. It brings your eye back to the center of the photo. It's just a little difference, but your eye pulls you to the middle again. Okay, I really like how this photo turned out. I really like when she's got a good skin tone and a good texture to her skin. I like how real that is. But if she didn't, if you had a larger portrait, you can also go in and, okay, I'm just changing the size of my brush and I'm turning down the opacity. What you want to do is do Option. You can sample her skin and then paint it back on. And you can paint it pretty solid in the beginning. You kind of overdo it. And then go up to opacity. See, I've painted her skin on, but see how it takes kind of the definition out of her face? So you go to the opacity and you just bring it back. So it's just a simple way to do some skin retouching. She doesn't really need it, so it's hard to see the difference, but if you have someone that's close up, that's a great way to do some skin retouching that looks really natural because the real skin comes through when you bring the opacity down. But there we go. So let's save this. And I'm going to close this out since we've saved it. And I'm going to bring it back up to show you the original that we just started with. And if it seems like a lot, you just kind of watch it over and over on the video, and you just pause where you need to. But here is our original, and here is our finished edit. So a nice whimsical photo. It's a little bit of work, but it's totally worth it in the end. And those are things you can add to just any kind of photo that's really fun. And I hope this helped. And I hope you enjoy using some of these tricks just on any type of photos you do.